Welcome to Ask Prep, your trusted companion for UPSC and IAS preparation. Today, we take a closer look at a dynamic and evolving subject in ethics and society, which is women in armed forces. Women's participation in the armed forces is a testament to their capability, resilience, and leadership. While traditionally confined to medical and auxiliary roles, their inclusion in diverse areas of defense and combat roles reflects the changing societal norms and growing emphasis on gender equality. For UPSC aspirants, understanding the topic of women in the armed forces is essential as it aligns with key areas like gender empowerment, defense policies, constitutional rights, and social justice. This subject underscores India's journey toward achieving greater inclusivity and recognizes the invaluable contributions women have made in safeguarding the nation. Through this session, we will delve into the historical evolution, challenges, milestones, and future pathways for women in the armed forces. From their pioneering roles in the pre-independence era to breaking barriers in combat, the trajectory of women's participation highlights their increasing prominence in defense and national security. Without further delay, let's get started. Introduction. The inclusion of women in the armed forces signifies a transformative shift toward gender equality in one of the most male-dominated sectors of society. Women's roles in the armed forces have evolved from traditional nursing and auxiliary positions to assuming leadership, piloting fighter jets, and commanding units. This progress reflects the broader empowerment of women in India, while highlighting ongoing challenges in achieving full parity, particularly in combat roles. For decades, women's participation in the armed forces was limited to non-combat services, driven by societal norms and logistical concerns. However, judicial interventions, policy reforms, and individual achievements have propelled their integration into broader roles, including combat support and strategic positions. The landmark induction of women as fighter pilots in 2016 and the granting of Permanent Commission (PC) in 2020 mark pivotal milestones in this journey. Historical background: Pre-independence era. During the colonial period, women's involvement in the armed forces was restricted primarily to auxiliary and nursing roles, reflecting the rigid gender norms of the time. However, certain key developments laid the foundation for the formal inclusion of women in the armed forces. Formation of Indian Military Nursing Service (IMNS) 1888. The IMNS was the first official platform for women to serve in a military capacity in India. Women in the IMNS were involved in providing critical medical care to soldiers during wars and other military operations. Their role was limited to nursing and caregiving, and they were not considered part of the regular armed forces. World Wars. During World War I, 1914 to 1918, and World War II, 1939 to 1945, women in India were actively recruited to support the British Indian Army. They served in auxiliary roles such as medical care, administration, and communications. Notably, the Rani of Jhansi Regiment, an all-women combat unit led by Subhas Chandra Bose's Indian National Army, INA, was formed during World War II. This was one of the rare instances of women being trained for combat roles. Despite their contributions, women were not given formal recognition or equal status within the military hierarchy. Post-independence era. After independence, the role of women in the Indian Armed Forces was confined to non-combat services, reflecting societal attitudes and logistical concerns about women in military combat. Over the decades, gradual steps were taken to expand their roles. Women in medical services. Women were inducted into the Army Medical Corps (AMC), Army Dental Corps (ADC), and Military Nursing Service (MNS) as part of the broader healthcare system in the armed forces. Their contributions were invaluable during wars, including the Indo-Pak Wars of 1947, 1965, and 1971, where they provided critical medical assistance to injured soldiers. Limited non-combat roles, 1950 to 1980. Beyond medical services, women's participation remained minimal and restricted to support roles like administration, logistics, and education. Societal biases and logistical challenges, such as the absence of adequate infrastructure to accommodate women in combat zones, were key barriers to expanding their roles. Opening of the officer cadre, 1990s. A significant milestone came in 1992, when the Indian Armed Forces began inducting women as officers in non-combat branches such as logistics, legal services, engineering, and education. This decision marked the beginning of a transformative era, allowing women to take on leadership roles, though they were still excluded from combat positions. Post-Kargil reforms, 2000s. Following the Kargil War in 1999, discussions on the modernization and inclusivity of the armed forces gained momentum. Women were given opportunities to serve in short service commissions, SSC, which allowed them to serve for a fixed tenure of 10 to 14 years. However, they were not granted a permanent commission, PC, limiting their career progression. Entry into non-medical roles, 1992, the pioneering year. The year 1992 marked a paradigm shift in the inclusion of women in the armed forces. Until then, their roles were primarily confined to the medical field, such as the Army Medical Corps, AMC, Army Dental Corps, ADC, and the Military Nursing Service, MNS. This limited participation mirrored societal attitudes that questioned women's suitability for military responsibilities beyond caregiving and auxiliary roles. However, the introduction of the Short Service Commission, SSC, in non-medical roles brought significant change. Key developments in 1992. Induction into non-medical roles. For the first time, women were inducted into non-medical branches of the armed forces, breaking traditional barriers. The branches open to women under the SSC included logistics, legal services, education, engineering, signals. Significance of the Short Service Commission, SSC women were allowed to serve for a tenure of 5 to 14 years, providing them an opportunity to contribute to key administrative and operational support functions. The SSC became the gateway for women to gain a foothold in male-dominated domains of the armed forces. Symbolic representation and strategic roles, women officers began playing critical roles in ensuring logistical efficiency, legal compliance, and engineering solutions in non-combat zones. They contributed significantly to operational preparedness by managing communications, strategic planning, and technical support systems. Challenges faced, societal barriers. Gender stereotypes and societal perceptions about women in combat roles. Infrastructure. Lack of gender-sensitive facilities like separate accommodation and washrooms in field areas. Work-life balance. Struggles with balancing demanding service life with family responsibilities. Government and judicial interventions, legal support, Supreme Court judgments, Babita Punia case, 2020 granted permanent commission, PC, to women in the army, emphasizing equality and enabling leadership roles. Encouraged reconsideration of restrictions on women in combat roles. Earlier rulings, 2010, granted PC to women in the Air Force. Policy initiatives, Permanent Commission, 2020 women can serve permanently in 10 non-combat army streams like signals, engineers, and education corps. Combat roles. Air Force, 2016 inducted women as fighter pilots. Navy, 2019 allowed women to serve on warships and submarines. National Defense Academy, 2021 women allowed to enter NDA for officer training, opening early career pathways. Additional measures. Gender sensitization and infrastructure upgrades, separate accommodation, facilities. Family-friendly policies, maternity leave, childcare support. Impact, breaking stereotypes. Women now hold leadership and operational roles. Enhanced strength, diverse perspectives and professionalism strengthen the armed forces. Challenges, full combat role inclusion and cultural resistance remain barriers. Way forward, combat role inclusion. Gradual induction of women into combat roles should be considered by addressing physical, logistical, and cultural challenges. Training and infrastructure. Build gender-sensitive infrastructure and focus on rigorous, unbiased training programs. Cultural change. Foster a gender-neutral environment in the armed forces through awareness and sensitization programs. Global learning. Draw lessons from countries like the US and Israel, where women have successfully served in combat roles. Conclusion. The combination of government policy reforms and judicial activism has significantly advanced the participation of women in the Indian Armed Forces. These interventions have not only enhanced gender equality but also underscored the importance of leveraging women's potential in nation building. While challenges remain, the steps taken so far lay a strong foundation for a truly inclusive armed forces, paving the way for a more equitable and progressive future. At AskPrep, we aim to bring such insights to help you prepare better for your UPSC and IAS examinations. Thank you. This is AskPrep, Ask Us Anything, your guide to mastering UPSC and IAS preparation. Let's decode complex topics and simplify your journey to success.